Andrew Grohl will be joining in about 10 minutes.
Oh,
He's
very
on
good.
schedule.
Very good.
Excellent.
One brief thing before I turn the show over to Paul is that I was on a third set of R211s on the Staten Island Railway. New set of numbers from 150 to 154. So, they're starting to come in. I saw one of the consists going south as I was heading home while walking up Bay Street. So, yeah, they're slowly but surely coming into the system. And so, without further ado, I will yield the floor to the program chairman, Mr. Paul Kalka.
Thank you, General Foz. Let me reiterate the welcome to everyone that made it their business to tune into our March membership program in the good hands of Cora Sowa. We will definitely be looking forward to the highlights, railfan highlights of the Sunshine State. Very timely in light of the fact that the Grapefruit League spring training season just ended, and that will leave the two remaining MLB teams in Tampa and Miami playing their regular season games there. Now, in the railfan front, we had two sets of museum equipment going up to Yankee Stadium yesterday from the number 4 platform at 42nd Street. Well, in just a week for the Mets opening day on April 4th, there will be a fleet of Redbird cars going out to Citi Field, of course, by way of the 7 train from Hudson Yard. And that'll leave at 12 noon. And the cost is simply your regular transit fare. And I don't believe they'll be making any stops after probably after Grand Central. So if you could be over to Hudson Yards at noon on April 4th, you could have a ride on museum equipment out to the Citi Field stop. Now on the railroad enthusiast front, next month with, as far as I know, Mike Vitiello's recuperation from his medical procedure earlier this month, we should be back to our Saturday afternoon at the movies. For those of you that were concerned about a conflict with the first Seder night of Passover, actually, there'll be plenty of time because, as advertised, Saturday afternoon at the movies is supposed to be an early afternoon activity. And a Seder on particularly coming off the Sabbath will be hours and hours later. So there won't be a conflict with Passover. Now, for the Zoom entertainment, we'll be back on April 25th. Something very unusual for us. The next 2 months, April and May, will be a 2-part program. The first part will feature Open Up Your Golden Gate, will be a San Francisco-based program, Rails of the Golden City. We'll view 8 cable car lines, 6 lines of Market Street Railway's white front cars, 3 abandoned Muni streetcar lines, and Southern Pacific's theme in 1955, and so much more. So that will be in 1 month on April 25th. Then in May, the second part of this extravaganza will feature the San Francisco Peninsula route of 1954. So we'll be in the good hands of the Southern Pacific. And we're going to see Mission Bay and the Bayshore Yards, a commute parade at Townsend, the Santa Cruz branch, suntan specials that ran in the summer, obviously, San Jose Yard and Lenzen Roundhouse, and so much more. So please be on board for our California-based two-part program starting next month and going into May. Finally, we'll finish off with a blast from the past, none other than our own Mitch Stackelman. He will be back with a Zoom program. He has developed a handful of Zoom presentations based on his 16mm films and some slides that were digitized. And this particular program in June is going to feature the work of our none other than Alan Roberts, the late great Alan Roberts of the Pennsylvania Railroad. So that will conclude our membership meeting year on June 27th. So please put that in your books, and we'll look forward to great attendance, because once again, month after month, year after year, the railroad enthusiasts present the very best in rail fan entertainment to you. And tonight is no exception, in the guise of Ms. Cora Sowa. So without any further ado, I will yield the floor to her. And take it away, Cora.
Okay, now let's try this share screen.
Okay.
And I want this one.
Yes.
Now, do you see the
Yes.
see the
Yes.
screen says
Uh-huh.
just trip to the
Yeah.
NRHS convention in Deerfield Beach. You will see that. Let me see. Gotta get this out of the way somehow, so I can see the little arrow. Well, we were supposed to leave on August 30th. However, Hurricane Idalia had other ideas. And it's interesting, we never saw any hurricane damage while we were there. So it must have hit in places that we were not. However, they did cancel the Amtrak trains to Florida. We rode on the, we missed the first day when they had seminars and lectures, but we got there in time to take the Bright Line private railroad, new railroad from Deerfield Beach to Miami. We rode on the Sugar Express with U.S. Sugar Corporation. We had a couple of choices of what to do, and I visited the Flagler Museum, which was the mansion that was built by Henry Flagler, who built the Florida East Coast Railway. And then we took the Tri-Rail commuter railroad to the Gold Coast Railroad Museum. And I rode in the Gitchigami Club private car with Carl Jensen and his wife Carol. That's Carol over to the left in this picture. And unfortunately, that was, if not the last, one of the last trips that he took with that car, because Carl Jensen died not long after that. He was not in good health even for that trip, but the doctor said it was okay for him to go, and so he came along with us. This is just over the top of the doorway. You see the speedometer on the right, and I don't remember what that other gauge is that's on the left. Oh, by the way, if any of you have any comments that you want to make or any questions, don't hesitate to cut in. I would prefer that you spoke in person.
It might be air pressure. It might be the air
Maybe-
pressure gauge.
Maybe
I'm looking at the numbers. It's possible it's maybe the brake pipe or brakes. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I think it was
I'm
the
not sure.
pressure gauge. It was a pressure gauge for something.
Yeah, no, it's probably It could be for the brake system.
Was the train stopped here?
Must have been.
At this point, it has stopped, yes, because
Yeah,
the
because
speedometer reads zero.
the black needle is the brake pipe,
Mhm.
and when it's at zero, that would mean the train's an emergency. The red needle is the brake
Oh.
cylinder, which is basically
See,
what's
yeah.
holding the train still.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah, Carl Jensen completely rebuilt that car. I mean, he didn't just
Wow.
restore it, he rebuilt it, put new wheels on it. It had been used for many different purposes. It had been used as a bunk car for crew members. It had been used as a test vehicle, and he restored it beautifully to in a sort of retro fashion to be a private car. And this is the very back part, which is the lounge, and then there are other parts which have bunks and which has a little kitchen facilities. This gentleman over here on the right-hand side of the picture is Lou Capwell, who was their kind of in charge of the crew, for the car, and took care of everything from making beds to supervising the dining room and dining facilities. There are also little dining tables in the car in other sections of it. Anyway,
What happened to the car after his passing, if I can ask?
I heard it was sold, but I don't know to whom. It's been sold.
Okay.
That's all I know about it.
Mm.
It would be nice if somebody else, starts running tours using the car. So anyway, we went down to Florida on the Silver Meteor, and we came back on the Silver Star, which I gather is not running now. They've combined it with something else to become the Floridian, and so I guess you have to take something else to Washington and then get on the Silver Star to get to Tampa. The difference between the two trains is that the Silver Meteor stays on the east coast of Florida, where the Silver Star goes up, not exactly through Tampa, it goes to Tampa and backs into Tampa, a couple of miles into Tampa. But
And then it backtracks from Tampa.
And what?
Remember when I rode the Silver Star returning, I remember I forget where it turned on the Tampa branch where it turns westward. Yes, where it turns westward, and then at the Tampa, it then reverses itself and then goes back to where it left.
Yeah, well, there's a Y. There's a Y.
Yeah, there's a Y, right.
Yeah, there's a Y. But the conductor had to stand in the back of our car. We were at the back of the train, and so he had to stand at the back and run the signals and everything for the train from the back of the train. I have pictures of that later on. So anyway, here we are on our way through New Jersey. I'm sure that this was a year and a half ago, so I'm sure that things have changed since then. We're going through Secaucus, and they're building whatever they're building there. Here, looking back at Manhattan.
I think that was a Portal Bridge.
Well, there's the Portal Bridge, and then there's another bridge also that they're building.
No, this is yeah, I believe this is, well, yeah, that one that they were building, but yeah, one of them may have been the Portal Bridge, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I'm not that familiar with that part of the world. You can see in the background that where there's a swing bridge that is in the open position on the right-hand side of the picture. You can see there's a swing bridge in the open position, and there is a boat going through the channel. So anyway, here we are going through Trenton, and there's this motto that is on this bridge. It says, "Trenton makes, the world takes." Philadelphia skyline with the Schuylkill River. And here in Wilmington, this policeman was training his dog. or at least exercising his dog. Here he is running for the frisbee. And here he is with the ball, and he's bringing it back. Give the dog some exercise. Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. platforms. Washington Monument. You can tell it's getting dark. Next day, we woke up and we were in Florida. Now that new company, Brightline, follows the old Florida East Coast Railway, but the Amtrak takes what was used to be the Seaboard line, and which is now CSX. And you can tell that it's sort of raining on the window. And there's a lot of swampland going through the swamps. More swamps and piney woods, lots of pine trees. Now we're in Jacksonville, Florida, on the east coast of Florida. I do not know exactly what this is. Probably some of you know better than I do, know the route better. Here's a little marina. More swamps. And now we're in Orlando. Very nice old station. Kissimmee. More swamps. Wasn't in Florida, but in Mississippi when they were building the Illinois Central Railroad through Florida, that one of the hazards was that they would find alligators taking a snooze on the tracks. Nice warm place. So we didn't see any alligators in Florida, but I imagine this is where they would live. Now we're in West Palm Beach, and that's the VA hospital. Palm Beach itself is an island. It's a barrier island. West Palm Beach is right across the channel from Palm Beach, and it is on the mainland. So this is West Palm Beach, which is the mainland part. Oh, and there is a tri-rail commuter train called Tri-Rail because it serves 3 different counties: Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade. And now we're in Deerfield Beach. Deerfield Beach is right near Boca Raton, and it serves the same people. This was a very nice hotel, but it was out in the middle of nowhere, not close to anything. Fortunately, it had good restaurant facilities in the hotel, so we could eat there. This is inside the hotel. This is where the convention was being held. This was a decoration in the lobby. And you can see that, it's all very nicely landscaped around there, but you're not close to anything. Now we took a trip from West Palm Beach. We wanted to go up to Orlando, but unfortunately they had just finished the Orlando station the week after we left. So it was not open yet when we went. Florida East Coast Railway serves the East Coast. The Florida East Coast Railway still exists. It's a freight railroad now, no passenger service. Brightline uses its tracks for its trains. Florida East Coast Railway serves the East Coast of Florida, as you can tell from the name, from Jacksonville to Miami. And I found that since 2017, it has been owned by Grupo Mexico. So the first day that the first day of the convention when we should have been there, they had seminars on various subjects, including the history of the Florida East Coast Railway, which is a very fascinating history. So I will fill in some of the information. This is a map of the Florida East Coast Railway as it was when it was first built in 1912. And it went all the way down the east coast of Florida and all the way out to Key West. Today, only the part that goes as far as Miami exists. Was built in the 1880s by Henry Flagler. And Henry Flagler was an entrepreneur and businessman. And with John D. Rockefeller, he was one of the founders of Standard Oil Corporation. And he engaged in various other business enterprises. And on a trip to Florida, he was really enamored of the place. And at that time, it really wasn't developed in any way. And so he built luxury hotels in St. Augustine, Miami, and Palm Beach, including the Ponce de Leon Hotel. And then he needed a railroad to connect the hotels. And so he bought up several different lines. Some of them were standard gauge, some were narrow gauge. He converted the narrow gauge lines to standard gauge, and he strung them together and built them into the Florida East Coast Railway. Then he got the idea of building the extension out to Key West. And at that time, Miami was not a deep water port, but Key West was a deep water port. And it was a coaling station for ships that were going on their way to Panama. And the Panama Canal was just being built. And so he got the idea that it would be really great to develop the Key West Harbor as a coaling station for ships on their way through the Panama Canal. And he could get all this trade from the Panama Canal. And this is an advertisement for the Florida East Coast Railway. Every day, a June day, full of sunshine where winter exists in memory only. A new route, and then farther down it says, new route to the Panama Canal. Well, one problem was that the ships stopped using coal. They started using oil, and they could go much farther without having to stop to refuel. And so there was no longer any need for the coaling station. And it was popular, however, with passenger service. And he built the railroad with, I don't remember how many bridges there are along there. Now this was the first time I was ever in Florida, and I have not been on the Florida highway that some of you have been on, driving all the way to from Miami to Key West. But some of these bridges that were built originally by the railroad were, several miles long, and each one was different. They're all very different from each other, and depending on the depth of the water and the speed of the current and the distance. This is the Long Key Viaduct. And this was, I think, the only swing bridge that they had across the Moser Channel. And this was the only, this was just a straight, the Bahia Honda Bridge, is the only one that's just a straight truss bridge. And this is a photograph that I found of the main terminal at Key West from 1933. And you can see the ship over, the steamship over on the right. And this is one half of a stereopticon view of the harbor. This is from 1898, when it was still a big coaling station. And here's a supply steamers, said supply steamers lining up at Key West. But by the time the Key West extension was built, it was no longer used as a port, and also they were already starting to build the overseas highway. Now the highway used a lot of ferry service. They were building roads across the keys themselves, across the islands, but we're still using ferry service in between the islands. There were a number of workers that had been put to work by the World War I veterans who had been put to work building the highway, and they were trapped on Key West. And when the Labor Day hurricane hit in 1935, more than 400 people were killed, including 200 World War I veterans who were working on the highway. And the railroad was destroyed. The bridges themselves, as we were saying before the meeting started, the bridges themselves were not destroyed by the hurricane. Bridges themselves were okay. They still stood. But by that time, the company was going bankrupt. And so at least the extension part was going bankrupt, and so they didn't rebuild it. And a relief train was sent to evacuate the work camps of the men who were working on the highway. And you can see in this picture that the whole train, the relief train was overturned. This is this picture is from the NOAA, the Oceanographic Service. This is from their archives. And Ernest Hemingway, who was the most famous inhabitant of Key West, he actually joined in the relief efforts. And there's Ernest Hemingway at his steering his boat, the Pilar, and that is also from the NOAA archives. And here's a picture that I just got off of Wikimedia, and you can see the new highway bridge on the right and the old railroad bridge on the left. And I was noticing that the highway bridge doesn't look in very good condition itself. The underside of it is sort of coming apart. But when they first built the overseas highway, they reused the old railway bridges. As I said, they were still using ferry service when they first built it, and so they simply repurposed the old railroad bridges. However, those were very narrow, and they wanted to build modern bridges that would accommodate 2 lanes so cars could pass each other easily. Anyway, we come back to modern times. And we are going for a ride on Brightline. And said the newest station that they built was the one at Orlando, and they completed that just after our trip. We were hoping we would be able to go on it. Wasn't ready yet. And we went to their we visited their West Palm Beach maintenance facility. Here we are in our bus going on the highway. And here we are at their maintenance works. And then we went to, so we saw those. As I recall, somebody had gotten the schedule wrong and they weren't expecting us, and we had to go and tell them that we were there, and Walter Zulig went and sort of arranged for us to be able to go in and see the maintenance facility. Then we get back on our bus and we're going to Miami, going through Fort Lauderdale. Very nice station. Now, as I said, I'm not familiar with this part of the country, and so I don't know what channel this is that we're looking at the boats going through. We're in Miami. A lot of construction going on. And now we're inside their operations center, where they have all these screens showing what's happening. And they also have, up in the upper right, they have a TV webcam. And we could watch them raising and lowering the bridge.
Listening for anybody who might stick out from that crowd in another way. For example, if we've had an incident and there's a train that's
Yeah, that was all there was to that. Then I went outside and got pictures of the outside of the Brightline station at Miami. They have very, very tight security there. And I had to go through security to get out of the building, and then I had to go through more security to get back into the building. And now we're back in West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach is the part that is on the mainland. Palm Beach is on the barrier island. West Palm Beach is on the mainland. And back at the hotel. And we took the Sugar Express steam excursion. This is owned by the U.S. Sugar Company, going from Clewiston to Lake Placid. Now, this is up in the middle of Florida. There you see Lake Okeechobee. I've underlined the names of the places where we went. Here's Boca Raton, and just south of Boca Raton is Deerfield Beach, which is where we were staying in our hotel. North of there is Palm Beach and West Palm Beach. And then in the interior of the Florida Peninsula is Lake Okeechobee. And to the south, just on the edge of the Everglades is to the south, is the town of Clewiston. And we took a train from Clewiston up to Lake Placid to the north. And this was going through sugarcane country. And we're taking a bus to Clewiston. Everything is full of water, drainage ditches, irrigation ditches, sugarcane fields in every state of maturity. Sugarcane takes, I think it's 3 years to mature from the time that you set out the little plants and they grow up to be big enough to be harvested. It's not a crop that they plant every year. That most agricultural crops, you plant them once a year and then once a year you harvest them. With sugarcane, it takes 3 years. So we were looking at sugarcane fields in every state of maturing. And water everywhere. And here's the stop for the Sugar Express, which is a tourist line that's run by the U.S. Sugar Company. And their motto is, "We raise cane." And that's on all their trucks or all their locomotives. And here's a loading facility for where they load the sugar cane after it's been harvested. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see any of the actual harvesting procedure. I wish we had. That would have been interesting. And here are some of the big cars in which they stack the sugar cane after they've harvested it. And so there would be fields of sugar cane divided by these channels that were filled with water. Water everywhere. Here's another of their loading facilities. You could see people working over there. Now this was not sure what these trees are. And now we have come to Lake Placid. And Lake Placid, Florida is named for Lake Placid, New York. That one of the founders of Lake Placid, Florida was, he had connections to Lake Placid in New York. And so he named the town for it. Lake Placid Historical Society. And Lake Placid has many murals painted on the sides of the buildings. This is just one of them. I didn't walk up into the town itself. I visited their little museum, but this is an example of the kind of murals that were painted on the walls. Here is an old steam-powered tractor. And inside, they had all kinds of exhibits of, what are these, various shells, stone tools. Bones of a giant land sloth. Different kinds of pottery from the peoples that lived there before. I don't know which peoples those were. I know there were Seminoles that lived in Florida. I don't know which peoples these are from. Arrowheads and spearheads. Florida's lost tribes. Oh, here you see the names of the various ones, various tribes. No, I knew when I was growing up in Los Angeles, we had people from many different countries and many different ethnic groups. And one of the girls in my high school was a Seminole Indian from Florida. Yeah, there's U.S. Sugar. We raise cane. Now, this locomotive was one of the ones that was built by the built for the Florida East Coast Railway and served on the Key West extension. And then he went through several different ownerships before it was bought by the U.S. Sugar Corporation and restored. And then at the other end of the train, at one end of the train, we had a steam locomotive, and the other end of the train, we had a diesel locomotive. But I don't know what happened. Yeah, we are in more overgrown stuff and more water. You can see there's water on the side of the tracks. Real swampland. There are more sugarcane fields, more loading facilities. And here you see the channel, the water channel in between the rows of sugarcane. There's a dam, I don't know which one. And there are the cars in which they put the harvested sugarcane. Seems to be a herd of cows. And now we're back at Clewiston. And we had a choice of several different tours that we could take, and so I chose to visit the Flagler Museum, which was his the estate that Henry Flagler built for his third wife. His first wife died. His second wife, I don't know, she had some kind of problems, and he divorced her and then married his third wife. And as a wedding present, he built her a mansion. And this just shows you where it is. West Palm Beach is on the left, and it's on the mainland. As you can see, there's lots of lakes around there too. Palm Beach is on the island, and you can here the red marker, it shows you where the Flagler Museum is. With its out the back of it, you have the view of Lake Worth, which is part of the intracoastal waterway. Intracoastal waterway goes all the way from, I think, New England, all the way around Florida, beside Florida, around the Gulf of Mexico, and along the Texas Gulf Coast, Galveston, Corpus Christi. This is a way that ships and barges can go all the way around the outline of the country without having to go out into the ocean and battle the storms in the ocean, and not only battle the storms, but also battle enemy ships that might be firing on them or trying to take them over as pirates. So this was a way that could and still is. It still is used in by barge traffic as a way of circumnavigating the country without having to go out into the ocean. Now, farther down on the island of Palm Beach is where Donald Trump has his Mar-a-Lago. That doesn't show on this map. I didn't show it that far down, but if you go farther south on this same island is where Mar-a-Lago is. So anyway, here is this is pulling back a little bit more, and you can see how there is so much water all around here. And here's the entrance, or an entrance to the Intracoastal Waterway that goes all the way down. And now we're on our bus, and we're on Palm Beach Island, and we're looking out at the ocean. I noticed this sign got a picture, hurricane evacuation route. Yeah, very apropos. And there are many big mansions on here. The Flagler Mansion is just one of them. Mar-a-Lago is one of them. Many huge mansions along here, big condo units. This is looking out to sea. I don't know what this ship was. It was just sitting out there, sort of shaped like a container ship with no containers on it. I don't know what it is. And here is the Flagler Mansion, Whitehall. And so it was built in 1902 for his third wife, Mary Lily Kennan. And then she inherited the house after he died in 1913. And then Mary Lily died 4 years later in 1917. She left the house to her niece, and the niece sold the house to an investment group who turned it into a hotel and built a huge extension on it. And then it was going to be torn down. And Flagler's granddaughter in 1959, Flagler's granddaughter, Jean Flagler Matthews, bought the house and saved it from destruction and demolition. And by that time, most of the house furnishings had already been distributed, either sold off or had been distributed to various relatives. And so Jean Flagler Matthews took it upon herself to reassemble as many of the interior furnishings as she could and turn it into a museum. This is a picture of what it looked like when it was a hotel. You can see that they built, I don't know what this, I want to get rid of this thing here. This is from an old postcard. And this shows that enormous extension that was built on the back. They built that in what used to be the old kitchen area. And yeah, it was the addition in 1959 when Flagler's granddaughter took over the house. She had that rear extension demolished and reassembled as much as she could of what was inside. And then they, instead of restoring the kitchen area, what they did was add offices and also a very nice gift shop. And they also added a pavilion out in the back, which I'll be showing you, which contains Flagler's private car. Why is this not going forward? Not going forward as it should. Oh. Oh. Trying to get to that. Oh, see an arrow. Oh, okay. Here we go. Here we go. Now, this is a view of the house is on your right. You're looking out at Lake Worth. You can see some boats out there on the lake. And on the left is this new pavilion that was constructed. This is the pavilion. This isn't the main house. This was the pavilion that was constructed in the 1950s. And here you see Flagler's own private car. And he was looking out again at the waterway. And we got a tour. Our tour guide for the house and for the pavilion, I don't remember what her name is, on the lady on the right who's talking. She was excellent. She knew all the facts about Flagler, about the Pacific, the Florida East Coast Railway, about the private car. She knew everything. And here's the interior of the car. This was Flagler's own private car. And now we're coming out the other end of the car. Now you get an outside view of that pavilion. So that's modern, but it's made to look old. And yeah, now we are inside the grand hall of the mansion itself, with the beautiful painted ceiling and gilded decoration. There's our guide standing over at the right. And there is a portrait of Henry Flagler himself, painted in 1899. And this is a more recent portrait, but based on old portraits of him. That's what he looked like. And this is the music room, which had its own organ down at one end of the room. And there is, in the music room, there is a portrait of Mary Lily Kennon Flagler, for whom the house was built. There is the console for the organ. There's a better picture, and also many pictures and portraits on the walls. In the billiard room. The grand ballroom, I guess that's what this is the grand ballroom. And now this is a back area, which I think was part of the area that was destroyed when they built that big 12-story addition. And then they had to restore this. This was a kind of a piazza porch that had a view out over the lake. The dining room. Well, look at that carved ceiling. The breakfast room. A piano for Mary Lily to play. Oh, and there's a portrait of the granddaughter who saved the building and established the museum. And upstairs, you go upstairs, and there are all these different bedrooms, each of which is painted in a different color and has a different style of furniture. This was the heliotrope room. The Louis XV room. The pink room. Everything painted in pink. The blue room. The master bedroom. Had its own bathroom attached to it. The silver maple room. This bedroom is in the modern English style, the pre-Raphaelite style of the paintings on the furniture reflect the pre-Raphaelite style popular at the time. The light fixtures are Art Nouveau. The colonial room with colonial style furniture. And here's the back stairs, also very elaborately carved. The yellow roses room. Everything covered in yellow roses. And there's a yellow rose in the vase. The morning room. For Mary Lily Flagler, she could retire to her room to practice music and to write her correspondence. Well, there's an Edison cylinder, recording cylinder. Now we're on our way back to Deerfield Beach. And now we took it the next day, September 6th, we took a trip on the Tri-Rail commuter line to the Gold Coast Railroad Museum, which is just outside of Miami, the city of Miami. It's located at the former Naval Air Station and dirigible hangar. In World War II, this was the largest airship base in the eastern United States. So we start our trip from the Deerfield Beach Station, which is used by both Amtrak and Tri-Rail. We'll be going to this station again when we finally leave Florida. Now we're taking Tri-Rail. Get off at the Miami Airport Station. Now we are inside the Gold Coast Museum. And I went out and back before I saw the inside part of the museum. I went out in the back where they had lots of cars and all kinds of other stuff. These are all different kinds of machinery that they have collected, that they have in their collection. And you see these big cement ribs that stick up. Now, I didn't have a chance to ask anybody, but I suspect that those are the remains of the blimp hangar, because they're big curved. There you can see in the back, there are two of those big concrete curved members that overhang everything. I suspect that was where they probably had the hangar for the blimps, but I didn't get it there. You can see it, have an even better view. I didn't have a chance to ask anybody about that. And here is a steam tractor, a Case steam tractor. Now, I think you will still see, sometimes you'll see modern tractors with the name Case on them, but the Case Corporation a few years ago was sold to, I think, Fiat, or a company that combined Fiat with some other company. But for years, the Case company, they started out building tractors and building steam-powered tractors, and they had the picture of the eagle on the front. And that eagle is a particular eagle. That eagle, his name was Old Abe, and he was in the Civil War. He was an actual bald eagle, and the eagle lived to be 20 years old. And he was a mascot of the 8th Wisconsin Volunteer Infantry Regiment. And he drove the Confederates nuts because he had his own stand that he would sit on, and he was tethered to that. But every time the guns would go off, he would start screaming, and the Confederates, and he would fly up into the air. And one time he actually got loose and was flying all over the battlefield and was driving the Confederates crazy. And the Confederates actually had a bounty out on him, anybody who could shoot that damned eagle. And I think they did succeed in wounding him on one occasion, but they corralled the eagle and got him back. And then after the Civil War, he went on tour to raise money for funds. The eagle was taken off on tour, and he had his own cage at the Wisconsin state capitol. And he was a very, very famous animal. And then there was a fire, and the eagle died of smoke inhalation. He died in the arms of his handler. And so they taxidermied the eagle, and the taxidermied eagle was on display at the Wisconsin State Capitol. And then there was another fire, and unfortunately, the remains of Old Abe were consumed in the fire. However, they have a statue in the state capitol of Old Abe, and there are various statues in other parts of the country commemorating the eagle. And in 1865, after the Civil War, the J.I. Case Tractor Company adopted the eagle symbol as their logo. And so that is Old Eagle standing on top of the world. And then at some point they dropped the eagle logo, and then, as I said, the case is now owned by I think it's a combination Italian American machinery, modern machinery company. But anyway, that is Old Abe, and since Old Abe the eagle was a local Wisconsin hero, and the Case Company was headquartered in Racine, Wisconsin, they took him as their logo, and there he is on top of the world. So then they have out in the back lot of the museum, they have all kinds of locomotives and cars and things, and then you can go. They're just waiting to, if they get the funding, they can restore them. And there you see more of what's left of the old Naval Air Station buildings. And you can go inside, and I'm sorry I couldn't get I don't know why I couldn't get a better picture, because that camera that I have usually takes pretty good even inside pictures, but they have a model railroad set. This one is a little bit clearer. Model ships. Well, then I went back inside. Now, this is one of the locomotives that was used on the Florida East Coast Railway. And unfortunately, this one, number 113, is they want to get rid of this. They want to sell it because they say they already have another locomotive that is just like it, and so they don't need two locomotives that are exactly the same. And so this one is for sale. The other one they are keeping. I don't know what the status of it is now. Oh, here we're inside. They have exhibits inside the cars. A combination passenger and baggage car. And since this was in the South, it had white and colored sections. There again, you have two gauges. Yeah, Jim Crow combination baggage and passenger car. And then here is their exhibit that they are the most proud of, which is the presidential car, the Ferdinand Magellan. And it was the one that was used by several United States presidents. It was originally built for Franklin Roosevelt, and it was built in such a way that it would accommodate his physical incapacities. And so especially built for him. And so he used it a lot. And then Truman used it, and Truman made his famous whistle stop campaign speeches, and this is the back platform from which he made those speeches. He would stop in every town and give an oration. I think the last I think the Eisenhower may have used it some, and I think it was last used by was last used by I think it was last used by Mamie Eisenhower. Used a little bit by Reagan. And so then we went through the taken on a tour through the Ferdinand Magellan. And there, very appropriately, is Tony White. And Tony White is the president of the NRHS. And so very appropriately, our president was standing on the presidential car, giving the victory signal. Now, here is another. I told you that first locomotive that I showed you, that it is exactly the same as one of the others that they have. Well, this is the one that is the other that is exactly the same. And they were both owned by the Florida East Coast Railway. But this one is famous because it was, and these are also sister locomotives to the one that pulled our train at the Sugar Express. And this pulled the last Florida East Coast train out of the Florida Keys just before the hurricane. And it also pulled the first train after the storm. And this locomotive is now on the National Register of Historic Places. And there she is. Number 153. And was sold to United States Sugar Corporation. And then it was donated to the University of Miami. And then it was, yes, it was donated to the museum. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. Then outside, as we are leaving the museum, there's what looks like a locomotive, but it's actually not a real locomotive. It is built out of parts of old locomotives, and you can tell that it's also just parts of it are just built out of sheet metal to look like a locomotive. This is on the grounds at the entrance of the museum, Gold Coast Railway Museum. Firebox. And then this is looking back at the museum buildings. And so then we go back, we get in our bus, we're ready to leave. And on our way back, we go through Hollywood, Florida, and there is the Guitar Hotel in the background. The Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in the shape of a guitar. So then we were doing fine on our return trip, except that there aren't very many sidings along here. It's single track. There are no sidings. And there was a freight train in front of us that had to set out two bad order cars that had some kind of trouble. And these cars were in the middle of the train. So that meant they had to break the train apart and extract the two bad cars, put them somewhere, and then reattach all the cars. So this was all happening in front of us. And so we just sat there and enjoyed ourselves and drank beer and enjoyed ourselves in the car, waiting for them to get the freight train out of the way. And here's the Deerfield Beach Station, another view of the Deerfield Beach Station, which is originally a Seaboard station, now CSX. And as I said before, both Amtrak and Tri-Rail use this station, so we were watching a Tri-Rail train go through while we were waiting for our Amtrak train. And we get back on our train to Silver Star. Sebring. I don't know where this is. Oh, here it is, Lakeland. And there we are, backing up 2 miles into Tampa Union Station. And so as we're entering the Y, the conductor came into our car, which was at the back of the train, and he had to take over directing the train from the back. And that was sort of fun. It's a statue of a rooster made out of pieces of sheet metal. Very realistic. I don't know what it is or why it's there. Well, it's obvious what it is and why it's there. Very nice. And here we're backing into Tampa. Backing into the Tampa station. And that's as close as we get to Tampa. Now we're going back out again. Kissimmee, we're back in Kissimmee. A lot of swampland. Raleigh, North Carolina. Prison buildings with a tower. Now, I took these pictures just showing the pine trees. There's such lush pine needles on the trees. And at Rocky Mount, North Carolina, there was a turnout for the Carolina Coastal Railroad going off to the left. Not sure where this is. It might be Baltimore. Oh yeah, we were looking at the clouds, which looked, some of them looked sort of menacing. It looked as if we might be going to have another hurricane. And one of our people that was on our tour is a meteorologist, and so we were getting his opinion on the shape of the clouds.
Maybe Todd Flickman.
Wilmington, with a nice mural on the side. a blue mural. I think this might be, this was a Navy air station, a Navy station, I believe. Could have been, was it Quantico?
That's in Virginia, yeah, for the Marines.
Alexandria.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the Masonic Tower.
Is that what that is, a Masonic?
Yes,
Ah,
that's correct.
yes, I didn't know what that was. Huh, thank you.
Sure.
There's the Washington Monument. And here we are at the end of the filming because we had to start getting ready to get all our stuff off the trains because we're getting close to New York. So that is the end.
Okay, very
Excellent.
That's
good.
it.
Yeah.
Ah, very good show. Ah.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. Consistently interesting. And you don't see too many railfan programs in Florida.
No, you
Yeah,
don't.
well, that's the first time I have ever been in Florida.
Oh,
Was
wow.
was Walter Zulig was the one who really who really set up the whole thing. You know, he and Suzanne, they spend half the year in Florida, or they
Oh,
spend the
yeah.
winter in Florida. And so they knew all the people to contact for us to go and see
Great.
things.
I'm glad he recovered from having been assaulted on that other trip in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the program.
Yeah,
That
great
was
program.
excellent.
I
Oh, yeah,
enjoyed
very
it.
Thank you, Cora.
Covered a
Yeah.
lot of ground.
Hmm. Hmm.
Really
Thank
was
you
a
very
nice
much.
program.
Very
Thanks
nice.
very
you.
much.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Thank
glad you
you.
weren't bored because I know some of
No,
you
not at
are
all.
familiar with Florida than I am.
Mhm.
I was glad to finally get there. I mean, I know people
Good.
who live there. One of my husband's nieces, she lives in Fort Lauderdale. She and her husband and kids live in Fort Lauderdale, and she is
Great.
an editor of of a yachting magazine. And
Oh,
so she gets to go on all these yacht tours. And her husband is a helicopter pilot, and he takes crews out to the offshore drilling rigs.
oh, okay. Well, that must be lucrative.
Yeah, and one of their they have a son and a daughter, and their son is now learning to be an airplane pilot. So
Oh, very good.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, another well-compensated field, usually. Well, thank you, Cora.
Hey, thanks very much.
Hope everyone
I guess
enjoys
I
their
will stop
weekend.
sharing. I'll
Very-
stop sharing at this.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Stop
hit
sharing.
stop sharing. Here we go.
And Cora, my wife Mary, says she liked your show too. She was in the background there.
Oh, good. Okay.
Tell her thank you.
Yeah,
Thumbs up.
right.
Yeah. Excellent.
Excellent show.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a
Good
good
night,
night.
everybody.
Good
Good night,
night.
everybody.
Good night.
Take
Good
care.
one.
Good night.
Thanks.